June 15, 1943. A classified intelligence report landed on General Hap Arnold's desk at Army Air Force's headquarters in Washington. The photographs were grainy, taken from extreme distance, but their implications were crystal clear. German engineers had done the impossible. The Messerschmitt Me-262, a jet-powered fighter capable of 540 miles per hour, had completed successful test flights. It was 100 miles per hour faster than any American fighter in production. Arnold studied the photographs with growing alarm. American pilots were dying in aircraft that could not break 450 miles per hour. German jet fighters would slaughter them. Intelligence estimated the Me-262 could enter combat operations within 12 months. The United States had no jet fighter. No jet fighter program. No jet fighter design. Nothing. Arnold picked up his phone and connected to Wright Field in Ohio. "Get me someone who can build a jet fighter. We have 6 months, maybe less." The response was blunt. "Sir, we don't have jet engine technology. We're years behind Germany. Designing and building a jet fighter from scratch would take 3 years minimum. It's impossible." Arnold's reply would become legend. "Then find me someone who doesn't know it's impossible." What Arnold didn't know was that 3,000 miles away in Burbank, California, a 33-year-old engineer named Clarence Johnson had already sketched preliminary designs for a jet fighter in his personal notebook. Designs created entirely without authorization, without funding, and in direct violation of War Department orders that explicitly forbid Lockheed from pursuing jet technology. But in 143 days, Johnson's illegal design work would produce the XP-80 Shooting Star, America's first operational jet fighter. It would arrive 7 days ahead of an impossible deadline and establish principles of rapid innovation that would define American aerospace engineering for the next 80 years. Johnson grew up in Ishpeming, Michigan, the 7th of 9 children in a Swedish immigrant family surviving on iron mine wages. The family was so poor that Kelly often went to school without shoes, even in winter. But Johnson possessed something that transcended poverty, an almost supernatural ability to visualize airflow, stress patterns, and mechanical systems in 3 dimensions. At the University of Michigan in 1932, Lockheed brought their new Model 10 Electra for wind tunnel testing. The tests revealed severe stability problems. Johnson, still an undergraduate, examined the data for 3 days, then submitted an unsolicited report identifying the exact source. The twin-tail configuration was creating destructive interference patterns. He recommended a complete redesign. Lockheed's chief aerodynamicist initially dismissed the report. Who was this student? But subsequent testing proved Johnson exactly right. Lockheed offered him a job before graduation. He was 22 years old. By 1943, Johnson was Lockheed's chief research engineer and primary designer of the P-38 Lightning, one of America's most successful fighters. But he understood that the future belonged to jets, and that understanding would bring him into direct conflict with military bureaucracy. In 1939, Lockheed engineer Nathan Price had designed an axial-flow turbojet and an entire fighter around it, the L-133, a radical blended wing-body configuration that looked like science fiction. Johnson studied Price's work extensively, recognizing its potential but also seeing fundamental problems. He began his own theoretical work on jet fighters, filling notebooks with calculations. Then in March 1941, the War Department issued a directive. Lockheed was ordered to cease all jet engine research immediately. All resources were to focus on P-38 production. The directive was unambiguous. Lockheed Aircraft Corporation is hereby ordered to discontinue all research and development activities related to jet propulsion systems. This order is absolute and admits no exceptions. Johnson obeyed the letter of the directive. He stopped working on jets during official hours, but at home, in his personal time, Johnson continued filling notebooks with jet fighter designs. He was violating the spirit of military orders, possibly violating his employment contract, and certainly exceeding his authority. He was also preparing for the moment when America would desperately need what he was creating in secret. By spring 1943, American intelligence had undeniable evidence that Germany was approaching operational deployment of jet fighters. The implications were staggering. American bomber losses over Germany were already approaching 10% per mission. If German jets entered service, the entire strategic bombing campaign could become impossible. In June 1943, Arnold's staff convened an emergency meeting with aircraft manufacturers. The findings were devastating. Bell Aircraft had produced the XP-59, but it was so slow it couldn't match existing propeller fighters. No American company had a combat-capable jet fighter in development. Then someone remembered that Lockheed had been working on jet concepts before the shutdown. A phone call went to Burbank asking if they had any designs available for review. The call reached Hall Hibbard, Lockheed's vice president of engineering. Hibbard hesitated. Officially, Lockheed had no jet fighter designs. Unofficially, Kelly Johnson had an entire file cabinet full of designs created without authorization over 2 years. Hibbard called Johnson into his office. "Kelly, do you have anything on jets?" Johnson pulled out 3 notebooks filled with calculations, drawings, and specifications for a single-engine jet fighter using a British de Havilland Goblin engine, featuring a straight wing optimized for transonic speeds and buildable using conventional construction techniques. Hibbard studied the designs for 2 hours. Then he called Arnold's office. "We can build you a jet fighter in 6 months. "That's impossible. Our best estimates say 3 years minimum." Hibbard looked at Johnson, who nodded confidently. "Send someone to review the designs. We can have a prototype flying in 180 days or less." On June 21, 1943, Colonel Ralph Swofford arrived at Lockheed's Burbank facility, expecting to review preliminary concepts. Instead, Kelly Johnson presented complete engineering drawings for a jet fighter. Not concept sketches, but detailed specifications including structural calculations, systems integration, weight and balance data, performance predictions, and manufacturing procedures. Swofford was stunned. "How long have you been working on this?" 2 years, Johnson admitted. "On my own time." "You were ordered to stop jet research." "I was ordered to stop Lockheed's jet research. I continued my own research privately." Swofford studied Johnson's designs for 6 hours straight, asking increasingly technical questions that Johnson answered without hesitation. Finally, Swofford said, "If you can really build this in 180 days, we want it. But can you actually do it?" Johnson met his eyes. "Give me 23 engineers, 30 mechanics, and full authority. No oversight committees, no progress reports, no bureaucratic reviews. I answer directly to you, nobody else. We'll have your prototype in 150 days. You're cutting 30 days off your own estimate? I'm motivated to prove the concept. I don't have authorization for this arrangement. I don't even have a budget. This would require approvals from multiple departments, contracting review, competitive bidding." Johnson interrupted. "Then forget the approvals. We'll start work tomorrow. When you have proper contracts, we'll backfill the paperwork. If we fail, Lockheed absorbs the cost." What Johnson proposed was completely illegal. Swofford could be court-martialed for agreeing. Swofford extended his hand. You have 150 days. Deliver the prototype to Muroc by November 17th. One day late, the project gets canceled. They shook hands. No contract, no purchase order, no paperwork. Just a handshake commitment to build America's first jet fighter in 5 months, violating every procurement regulation in existence. Johnson needed space immediately. The Lockheed plant was operating at maximum capacity. Every square foot was dedicated to P-38 production. Johnson found only one available space, a parking lot adjacent to a plastics factory that produced components using processes generating truly horrific odors: chemical solvents, heated resins, and industrial adhesives. Johnson rented a used circus tent, erected it over the parking lot, and declared it home to Lockheed's jet fighter program. The tent measured 60 feet by 100 feet. It leaked when it rained, provided no climate control, and the stench from the plastics factory was overwhelming. One of Johnson's engineers, Irv Culver, was a fan of the comic strip Lil Abner, which featured a mysterious location called the Skunk Works. When answering his phone one day, Culver said, "Skunk Works, inside man Culver speaking." The name stuck, later modified to Skunk Works to avoid copyright issues. Working conditions were nightmarish, but Johnson loved it. The miserable conditions kept bureaucrats away. No military oversight committees wanted to visit the reeking tent. No corporate executives wanted to inspect progress in 100-degree heat. Johnson and his team could work without interference. Johnson personally selected his team by stealing people from other Lockheed programs. His recruitment pitch was simple. We're building a jet fighter in 150 days. We're working in a circus tent next to a factory that smells like death. You'll work 10-hour days, 6 days a week, with no overtime pay. There's no contract, so if we fail, we all get fired. Who wants in? 28. People volunteered immediately. Johnson established his philosophy from day one. We're going to build this aircraft faster than anyone thinks possible. That means no committees, no progress reports, no bureaucratic reviews. Every person here has authority to make decisions in their area. If you see a problem, you fix it. We answer to nobody except Colonel Swofford, and we answer with results, not excuses. It was chaotic. It was illegal. It worked. Work began June 26, 1943. Johnson's team faced challenges that would have stopped conventional programs. First problem, they didn't have an engine. The British had promised 2 de Havilland Goblin engines, but they were still in England. Johnson had to design the entire aircraft around blueprint specifications. This was insanity. How do you design engine mounts without the actual engine? Johnson solved it with mathematics. He calculated every dimension from specifications, designed mounting systems with flexibility to accommodate variations, and built the airframe assuming the blueprints were accurate. When the first Goblin arrived in August, it fit perfectly. When the second arrived 3 weeks later, Johnson's team installed it in 18 hours. Second problem, nobody had ever built a jet aircraft. The XP-80 used technologies that didn't exist in conventional fighters. Johnson's solution, continuous experimentation. The team built components, tested them, modified them, and rebuilt them until they worked. One critical problem nearly destroyed the program. During ground engine runs, the air intake ducts suddenly imploded, crumpling inward and sending debris through the engine, destroying it completely. They'd lost one of their 2 engines. No replacements available. Johnson personally redesigned the intake ducts in 36 hours, reinforcing them while maintaining the aerodynamic profile. He couldn't test the design. They didn't have a spare engine to risk. When they installed the remaining engine and ran it to full power, the reinforced ducts held perfectly. Third problem, Everything took longer than expected. By October, they were 3 weeks behind with 6 weeks remaining. Missing the deadline meant project cancellation. Johnson doubled down. The team went to 7-day work weeks. Johnson personally worked 16-hour days, solving problems in real time, making instant decisions that would normally require weeks of committee review. On November 8th, the completed XP-80 was rolled out of the circus tent. Elegant in its simplicity, a bullet-shaped fuselage with straight wings, wing root air intakes, and a single jet engine. It looked fast, sitting still. They'd missed their internal deadline by 8 days, but were still 7 days ahead of Swofford's deadline. The prototype was driven to Muroc Army Airfield for flight testing. The XP-80 had been designed and built in exactly 143 days. The fastest aircraft development program in aviation history, January 8, 1944. Test pilot Milo Burcham climbed into Lulu Bell's cockpit at Muroc. Burcham was one of Lockheed's most experienced test pilots, but he'd never flown a jet. Nobody in America had flown anything like the XP-80. Johnson briefed him. "The controls will be extremely sensitive. We have a 15-to-1 boost ratio on the ailerons. Small inputs will produce large responses. Be gentle." Burcham applied full power and released the brakes. The XP-80 accelerated smoothly and lifted off after less than 2,000 feet. Burcham climbed to 1,000 feet, tested the controls, and immediately realized something was wrong. The aircraft was wildly over-responsive. 5 minutes after takeoff, he landed. "It's too sensitive," Burcham reported. "The controls need complete redesign." Johnson reviewed the data and shook his head. "The aircraft is fine. You're over-controlling. This aircraft responds to touches, not force." Burcham flew again the next day. This time he treated the controls like delicate instruments. The XP-80 responded beautifully. He accelerated to 400 miles per hour, then 450, then 490. On his third flight, Burcham pushed the XP-80 to 502 miles per hour in level flight, making it the first American aircraft to exceed 500 miles per hour. The age of American jet aviation had begun. By March 1944, the XP-80 had proven its performance exceeded every American fighter in service. Top speed, 558 miles per hour. Service ceiling, 45,000 feet. Rate of climb, 4,580 feet per minute. Revolutionary. General Arnold ordered full-scale production. Lockheed received contracts for 13 service test aircraft, then orders for 1,000 production P-80s. But one detail haunted procurement officers. The official contract didn't arrive at Lockheed until October 16, 1943, 4 months after work had begun, and nearly a month before the prototype was completed. This was unprecedented. Contracts always preceded work. The XP-80 program had reversed the entire process: build first, authorize later. Congressional committees asked pointed questions about unauthorized expenditures. Arnold's response effectively ended the inquiry. "They built the best fighter in America in 143 days while following virtually no regulations. Maybe the problem isn't their methods, maybe the problem is our regulations." The P-80 Shooting Star missed World War II. The first operational aircraft didn't reach combat units until after Germany surrendered. The jet fighter built in response to the Me-262 threat never faced its German counterpart. But the P-80's true legacy wasn't its combat record. It was the Skunk Works. The circus tent became the birthplace of systematic innovation. Johnson formalized the approaches that worked into Kelly's 14 rules, principles that would guide Lockheed's advanced development for decades. The philosophy was revolutionary. Innovation thrives when smart people are given authority, trust, and freedom from bureaucratic overhead. The Skunk Works produced the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71 Blackbird reaching Mach 3.2, the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter, and the F-22 Raptor. Everyone pushed the boundaries of engineering. Everyone traced its lineage back to Johnson's circus tent and his willingness to violate regulations in service of results. The P-80 story raises uncomfortable questions about innovation, authority, and rules. Kelly Johnson violated direct military orders by continuing jet research. He committed Lockheed resources to an unauthorized project. He began work without contracts. He ignored procurement regulations designed to ensure fairness and prevent waste. By conventional metrics, Johnson's actions constituted insubordination, possibly fraud. Yet his unauthorized work produced exactly what America needed at precisely the moment it was needed. The contradiction is profound. The rules existed for good reasons, but following them would have meant no American jet fighter until years too late. Johnson understood something fundamental. Rules are tools for achieving goals, not goals themselves. When rules obstruct essential objectives, the choice isn't between following rules or chaos. The choice is between rigid adherence to procedures and accomplishing what matters. Johnson wasn't a rebel against all authority. He was a rebel against authority that obstructed excellence. He ignored rules that prevented solving problems but maintained rigorous standards for technical quality. This distinction is critical. In 1990, Kelly Johnson died at age 80, having designed over 40 aircraft and earned every major award in aviation, including the Medal of Freedom. In a 1985 interview, Johnson reflected, "We proved that you don't need huge teams, massive budgets, and years of development to create breakthrough technology. You need talented people who understand the problem, authority to make decisions, and freedom from bureaucratic interference. Give smart people those three things, and they'll accomplish miracles." The interviewer asked, "But you violated regulations. Isn't that dangerous to recommend?" Johnson smiled. "I violated regulations that prevented solving problems. I maintained standards that ensured quality. There's a difference. The P-80 program succeeded because we were willing to ignore the former while maintaining the latter." So people should break rules whenever they think they're right? No. People should understand which rules serve essential purposes and which merely serve bureaucratic convenience. Then they should be willing to face consequences for acting on that understanding. I risked my career on the P-80. If it had failed, I would have been fired, possibly prosecuted. But I believed the mission mattered more than my career. That's not rebellion. That's responsibility. Today, over 150 P-80 F-80 shooting stars survive in museums worldwide. But the shooting star's legacy extends far beyond museum displays. The SR-71 Blackbird, still the world's fastest manned aircraft, the F-117 Nighthawk, the first stealth fighter, the U-2 spy plane that helped prevent nuclear war. Everyone came from Skunk Works teams following Kelly's approach. The circus tent is long gone. The Burbank facility has been redeveloped. But the philosophy survives. When modern aerospace companies face seemingly impossible challenges, when timelines seem too short, requirements too demanding, they look to the Skunk Works model. They ask, can we assemble a small team, give them authority, remove bureaucratic obstacles, and trust them to deliver? Sometimes the answer is no, but sometimes, when breakthrough innovation is required, the answer is yes. And when organizations have the courage to say yes, miracles happen. Just like they happened in 1943, when an engineer who'd been ordered to stop working on jets designed America's first jet fighter in notebooks filled during unauthorized work on his own time. Kelly Johnson's technical rebellion created the foundation for American jet aviation. His illegal handshake deal produced an aircraft in 143 days that conventional programs couldn't have delivered in 3 years. The P-80 Shooting Star proved that sometimes rules are obstacles to overcome, not commandments to obey. That sometimes one engineer, working without authorization in a circus tent next to a factory that smells like death, can change the course of history